Hi, my name is Sofiya, and today I'm going to start the presentation by explaining the plot and setting of the movie The King's Speech. Okay, so the movie is started with a young man that has been struggling with a speech disorder, also known as stammering or stuttering. And that man was known as King George VI, but back then he was known as Prince Albert. Right, so he was a man of title. He's also a prince, so he must show that he has no flaw in his presentation towards the whole world. So by having stammering and stuttering, it has caused him a severe doubt in himself. So he had tried many methods. He has found many brilliant doctors, but none of the method works until his wife found out about Lionel Logue. And at first, Prince Albert was disbelieved with Logue did odd abilities and techniques, so he shoved it down for a while until the death of his father, which is the King George V, and the title of king was passed down to his brother, and his brother passed down the title to him. So with his stammering, he thought himself to be unfit to be king, so he continued to learn and go to therapy, like a speech therapy with Lionel Logue, and in the end he finally discovered his own voice and finally can lead a kingdom throughout the world. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the subject. Okay, so the theme or subject of this movie, it is covering the topic of language development in our very own textbook, which is the psychological speech textbook. Language development is well known to start since the person was still a child, which is in between of 1 until 6 years old. And children are known to quickly growing their vocabularies and acquiring complicated languages principle at their age. So it is quite normal to have some sort of hiccups or stuttering along the way. Okay, when it comes to stuttering, it is characterized by 3 major points, which the first one is the repeated words or sounds or syllables. The second one is halting speech production, just like King George, and the last one is uneven rate of speech. Well, most youngsters will not stammer until they are adulthood. Okay, now we're going to see in the next slide, which is the possibilities of causes of stuttering. So there are multiple possible causes of stuttering, but some of the 4 major ones is the family history of stuttering, family dynamic, and third one is neuropsychology, and fourth one is development during childhood. And also, it is noted to know that a severe emotional trauma can also cause psychogenic stuttering. Okay, so in this slide, we are focusing on stammering or stuttering in the case of King George VI. Well, his stammering or stuttering started at a very young age, which was when he was 4 to 5 years old. And his type of stammering is known as halting speech production, which is delaying each word produced. A final possibility is that it was triggered by some sort of traumatic event. For example, in the movie he mentioned about he was being forced from being left-handed to right-handed. And apart from that, he also mentioned about being abused by his nanny for years without his parents knowing. So that traumatic event may have triggered this stammering or stuttering to start.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurin Afiqah, metric number 2015414. Okay, so for my part, I will highlight the issues raised from the movie. Okay, so first things first, I like to highlight how this movie has raised stuttering awareness. Okay, so here is fact number 1. It is estimated that 1% of the population stutters. Now, this number might be insignificant, but it means the world for this 1% to be acknowledged what it's like to live with a disability. We all have experienced interruptions in our speech, so no one can speak perfectly all of the time. However, in people who stammers, these disturbances or disfluencies are more severe and frequently occur. For some people, stuttering goes away as they get older, but for others, it persists into adulthood. Okay, next, stammering is seen as a social mistake or blunder. Stammering is like a party's elephant. there's a big fat elephant in the room at a party, but no one ever mentions it. They simply go around it. So I bet you must have been in this situation before. When you meet someone who stammers, you're not sure whether to be embarrassed for them or not, but you definitely are not going to say anything about it. And third is to debunk stuttering myths. So one of the most popular ones is this one. Many stuttering kids know exactly what they want to say. However, their cognitive pathways aren't ready to deliver it. As a child constructs longer and more intricate phrases, the load on his or her brain increases, and this increased demand could affect the motor control required for vocal production. So, when motor pathways can't keep up with the language impulses, stuttering might occur. And on the slide is one of the scenes from the movie where King George V scolded the Duke of York for not being able to speak perfectly. Okay, so for the second issue in the movie is about psychological pressure. In this movie, we can see that the Duke of York had been mistreated by his father, King George V, for not being able to speak perfectly, or should I say, not being perfect in the king's eyes. So being different from his father, being a public figure, this psychological pressure on him had led to the worsening of his case of stammering. And in the movie, I would like to point out that even his speech therapy with Lionel Locke was kept a secret. It was as if it was a really bad thing for a future king to have normal issues. Like I said, he was seen as invincible in the movie, which is very sad and very wrong. So what can I say is that if you have encounterments with family or friends who stutters, do listen to them, be patient with them, be supportive. And that is all from me. Thank you.
Specific psycholinguistic theories and or themes shown in the film. Stuttering is a speech condition that causes the flow of speech to be disturbed. These unintentional interruptions often consist of sound, syllable, or word repeats. Also, it includes sound extensions and silence intervals or blocks while the person is attempting to talk. It can be derived from psychological trauma, one of the reasons, and it is commonly acquired during childhood. And also, stuttering is acquired, not born with.
For my part, I will be explaining whether psycholinguistics theme mentioned by Alya earlier contradict or support with what we have learned. So the specific theme that we have seen in the King's Speech movie is none other than stuttering, which is categorized as a type of speech disfluency. So from the movie, Lionel, the person who treats King George VI, gave a statement that no infant starts to speak with a stammer, which supports a finding from Tomasilo's book that says the children at the age of 2 years old and above have the chance to get speech disfluency. However, during this age period, it is a common problem experienced by both normal children and the ones who have stuttering issue. So to highlight here, most people who stutter begin stuttering in childhood during the developmental period in which they are learning to communicate. So it does not happen right after we came out from our mother's wombs. And also, there is no certainty in determining the factor of stuttering, which can influence the brain activity of people who stutter. But if we'll look from biological basis of language, the areas of the brain that's in charge of language may work differently in people who stutter. So from what we have learned, the language functions are controlled in the left hemisphere of our brain, right? And the majority comes from right-handed people. So from the movie, we know that King George VI was born naturally left-handed, and from what I know, right-handed people usually use their left brain, while left-handed people use their right brain. it indicates that people who stutter have more right hemisphere activity with less activity in the left hemisphere, where this part of the brain is in charge of language functions. So some people who stutter have more difficulty processing auditory information and maybe have slower reaction times. So in general, both pathways in our brain are responsible for speech production, and they function differently when stuttering occurs.
Specific scenes or occurrences in the film which stood out as being essential to the concept of psycholinguistics. It's the part where Bertie, King George VI, told Lionel about his condition when it started upon being asked. Bertie, being reluctant in opening up to his past, told Lionel that he was born with it, in which Lionel simply stated, no one born stammering. Bertie finally confessed that it happened around when he was 4 to 5 years old. He continued on, saying that his father and his nanny would push him beyond his boundaries whenever he stammers.